21 years after violent riots rocked India's Gujarat state, communal riots, another Indian state, this time the easternmost Manipur state, is up in flames, also along communal lines. Videos have emerged over the past few weeks which show instances of women, naked women being paraded and eventually being raped. And but these videos were actually shot back in May. In all of this, there's been a political uproar inside India's parliament where the opposition has been demanding accountability, and an address by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Mr. Modi has spoken on this on the violence in Manipur and these instances of alleged rape, but outside Parliament, not inside. To get a better understanding of what's going on in India and what this means, I'm joined by Ruben Banerjee. He is the author of Editor Missing, the media in today's India, and he's also my former editor at Al Jazeera English. I think I should get that out. Thank you so much, Ruben, for joining us. Is it fair to draw comparisons between what is happening in Manipur today to what happened in Gujarat 21 years ago?
Not really. I wouldn't like to compare apple and oranges. Gujarat is in the west of the country, a country as vast as India, whereas Manipur is in the extreme northeast, bordering Myanmar. So the contexts are different. The locations are different. Then it's happening after almost 2 decades. So it's a whole new thing that's happening. Undoubtedly, whatever is happening in Manipur, they are awful. And we have all been horrified by the video that finally emerged 2 months after violence actually broke out in the state of Manipur. The images are so shocking that we hardly have any words to explain our outrage. Prime Minister Modi has finally spoken out, though it came very late. If I remember correctly, violence erupted in the first week of May in Manipur, and it has continued unabated since then. For some strange reasons, the government of India had been pretty silent about it. And Mr. Modi, who otherwise is known to be a great communicator, he kept quiet. So that was a surprise to all of us. And then finally, when this video emerged, I think last week, and by the way, there is an internet shutdown in Manipur since the violence began. So maybe that's the reason why the video did not surface earlier. But finally, when the video made it, people were so shocked. And the outrage, the sense of outrage was so deep that Modi had to speak up. And he did, very briefly though. And then there is another debate raging over what he said and what he did not say. So we can tackle that as we go along.
Before we get to the politics of it, for the benefit of our viewers, explain to us this area, Manipur on the eastern end. We're talking about Kukis, we hear about Meiteis, Christian, Hindu. It's quite complex. So explain what is at play here.
So Northeast has been a very complex region. It's been blighted by periodic militancies, insurgencies. It's a mosaic of tribes and tribal communities and other communities who are living there cheek by jowl. So it's been very, very complex. And there has been some kind of whether we accept or we don't accept, but people living in the Northeast and Northeast has always complained that there has been a disconnect between the mainland in India and the northeastern hilly states because it's only a very small stretch of land which goes over Bangladesh that connects the northeastern regions with the rest of India. So people in Northeast has always been complaining that there has been a kind of a disconnect. They don't They are not generally taken, accepted as Indians by the people in the rest of the country. Even their looks and appearances, uh, that sets them apart. And there have been kind of complaints of racism against them. They've been disparagingly often described as chinkies and whatever, uh, like they're Mongoloids, they're Chinese. So those kind of misconceptions, there and those indignities, people at Northeast have unfortunately had to endure. Uh, but then this particular government of Mr. Modi, ever since he came back, uh, we were kind of reassured that there is a greater push this time, Look East policy, which sought to integrate the northeastern states more cohesively with the rest of the country. And we all thought that that will work out. It's for the good of the country, for the nation as a whole. So we were kind of looking forward to this because whether we agree or we don't disagree, whether we support or we don't support, the fact of the matter is Mr. Modi is the legitimately elected Prime Minister of India. And if it does something good, obviously, we need to support all those initiatives of his. And I particularly, for one, was very hopeful that his Lucas policy will bring about profound changes in the way that the rest of the country looked at Northeast. But sadly, whatever that has happened in Manipur, and particularly this particular video, it's kind of come as a shock. And there is utter disbelief now. Like people don't know how to react to this orgy of violence that has swept Manipur.
Let's talk about that reaction, because you talk about the Northeast as being disconnected almost. You have Mizoram there, you have Assam there. The state itself, Manipur, is governed by a ruling coalition led by the BJP, which also is in power, which is Mr. Narendra Modi's political group. Why has or has this setup failed? And if so, why has the chief minister or the authorities not been fired in Manipur?
Well, that has been one of the many things that people in India have been generally asking, that how is it that Mr. Biren Singh, the incumbent chief minister of Manipur, still is managing to keep his job. Uh, Incidentally, Mr. Singh, who in his younger days was a footballer, he was a politician belonging to the opposition Congress party before he joined the BJP. So he was a congressman, out and out, till before the last election. I think in 2017, he jumped ship and joined the BJP, and within months he became the chief minister. So I think he survives primarily because the BJP, which rules both Manipur and is also in power at the center under Narendra Modi. I have a feeling that Biren Singh has so far survived despite his obvious failings in controlling the situation, primarily because of the fact that the BJP doesn't have any other leader of stature to hold the fort in his place. They have run out of, they do not have much of options. And also, another important reason could be that to remove a chief minister under pressure, under criticism, mounting criticism, can make look Mr. Modi weak. But then you must concede that Modi has molded himself as that powerful, strong leader to capitulate to public demand and outrage doesn't do his image any good. And maybe that could be one of the reasons that Biren Singh continues in the position that he holds.
We started this conversation with, well, I started the conversation by drawing a comparison, which you said apples and oranges, Gujarat riots in 2002 and the current violence in Manipur. Mr. Modi, who was the chief minister of Gujarat at that time, did not resign. In fact, his strength and popularity grew among the masses. what is this appeal? And specifically talk about this brand of communal divisions on which the BJP thrives by making the majority insecure about the minority.
Well, what we all know that BJP draws its ideological strength from the RSS, which is the parent organization, the ideological fountain, and the BJP as an extension of RSS, and I don't think they make any bones of it. They have been looking to institutionalize Hindutva, the Hindu way of life. Uh, but then India is a secular country, with diverse religions, languages, customs, traditions. It's a truly a melting pot. And India's strength historically has always been unity in diversity. But overriding all that, the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the right-wing party that it is, it's been pushing for its own brand of Hindutva, which seeks to institutionalize majoritarianism. So to play into that, to bolster that, there has been attempts, and we suspect there have been attempts to make uh, majority Hindus, who constitute about 84% of India's 1.4 billion population, feel threatened. They are told day in and day out that Hindus are under siege in India. Okay, that may not be arithmetically correct, because Muslims are only about 13%, I think, of the total population, and their population has remained kind of static. Like, it isn't that the population of Hindus in India is alarmingly going down, or the population of Muslims are alarmingly growing. So it hasn't happened. But then there has been this kind of a narrative which has been fed into, that Hindus are under kind of a siege. So this binary has been, we have seen in recent years, this binary playing out at many places. Gujarat, though, as I said earlier, that though the context was different, the times were different, uh, but then this binary has generally been playing out almost everywhere, in Uttar Pradesh, in Bengal, wherever, whichever direction you look at. And sadly, it's playing out even in the Northeast. Uh, but then again, we should not be losing sight of the fact that Northeast has been always been a kind of a minefield, with various tribes and communities and cultures and dialects, everything coming into play there. So the dynamics in Manipur will be different, definitely be wholly different from what happens in Gujarat. So there have been tensions in Manipur between various communities, particularly between the Meiteis, the Hindu Meiteis who live in the valley, and the Kuki tribes who predominantly are in the hills. Uh, and then throw in the mix Nagas and other communities. So they are also there. So there have been differences there on community and tribal lines, and things have now come to a pass, unfortunately.
You talk about fear mongering and building a narrative over many years. We started with Gujarat riots, and yes, the Northeast, as you say, is very different geographically, ethnically, it's very different. You wrote a book called Editor Missing: The Media in Today's India. When you talk about narrative building, tell us about your experiences. You lived outside of India, you worked with international publications, Al Jazeera English for many years. You, in fact, were one of the founding members of Al Jazeera English's editorial online board. Tell us about this narrative building and the role of Indian media and how it has evolved, so to speak.
I don't see honestly any evolution in this. The Indian media sadly is degenerating very fast. So the Indian media, which used to be very kind of dynamic, uh, they used to hold the mirror to the people in power. They used to question. all that has, the media has gone silent, unfortunately. And more than being silent, they are kind of complicit in a very large degree in weeping up tensions and hatred in this country. They have been complicit. And when I am saying that they are complicit, I am uh, not generalizing it. There are still those islands of resistance, like free, fair media, journalists, or some houses who are still standing up to all these pressures and still managing to speak truth to power. But generally speaking, the Indian media is very badly capitulated. And at the moment, the scene is very, very dismal, very bleak. Even with this Manipur, whatever the violence that has been happening, uh, most of the most popular television channels and mainstream media houses generally prefer to ignore whatever that is happening in Manipur because they don't want to digress from the narrative that they have been craftily trying to orchestrate and manufacture over the years. So you will see some trivial issues being discussed on primetime television, not Manipur. It wasn't the case for the first 2 months at least, till the time this viral video of this woman being parroted naked and gang raped. That kind of forced them to reluctantly take up this issue of Manipur. But as again, I don't think it's been very organic, it's been very voluntarily. It's more of a kind of a, like you had to do it, so you're doing it. So yeah, there is no sincerity in it. So the government is kind of escaping scrutiny. We are not questioning them as hard as or as persistently as we ought to have. So they are escaping lightly. Yes.
Ruben Banerjee, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. And you do have a point in this atmosphere of violence or fear. When there's violence going on, the media has to play a role. But when there is a narrative being built and you can be blacklisted or ostracized as a result of this narrative, fear often leads to silence. And that's our show for today. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe and do turn your notifications on YouTube for Let Ali Show You. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Ali_Mustafa. Take care.